Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Closer Look at Game Design, the podcast about the inner workings of games. You might love them, but you might not know how they work. My name is Joseph Barros. I am met with Matthew O'Neill and Trevor Masnyk. Today's topic is we're going to be breaking down music in video games, everything from soundtracks to scores to the inner workings of how that music is actually made, which is why we have Mr. Trevor Masnyk here as a guest. Before that, though, gentlemen, let's talk about some game news. Dead Space, the remake, came out to really, really good criticism. It was critically reviewed on 89 on Metacritic. One of the game reviews from Tierra Games scored it a 90, saying, Dead Space is a remake that manages to surpass the original entry. Its story feels complex, and the gameplay mechanics are more robust than the first game. It should serve as an example for any upcoming remake that wants to pay homage to the original work while making changes to enhance its impact with audiences old and new. What do you guys think about that? Have you played the new Dead Space game?
I haven't played it, but I've been watching a YouTuber play through it, and it's a really interesting remake because I've seen footage of the old game, and there's so much different about it, but there's also so much that's similar, which, I mean, it's a remake, so obviously that is going to be the case. But I do agree that it feels a lot more complex than the original game, and it's just a lot more refined. And there are things that weren't in the first game, like the zero gravity, stuff like that. It's really interesting. I think it deserves the score that it got.
You haven't played it yet?
No, I want to. No.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Trev, what do you think?
I mean, I'm not as familiar with that title as others. From what I've heard, it's supposed to be good. Now that I'm hearing more about it, I probably will go home and check it out a little more.
Do you want to explain to the audience your favorite part of the new Dead Space game?
Yeah, sure. So, in Dead Space, the remake, when you launch the game and you have a saved file, the background of the menu is where you last left off, and when you select play, it zooms out and your character is just there, and you immediately start playing the game.
That's
like
folks.
The most interesting thing I've ever seen in a video game.
I love that.
It's so cool.
I like that a lot too. Next we have Knockout City, which is something that I don't think I would have foreseen from my 2023 bingo card. Genuinely, Knockout City is going to be shutting down its servers and its live service updates after its next update. So that means that anyone who has bought anything or has played and really invested time into Knockout City is going to kind of be out of luck. They're going to be taking the game off a line, which for me is kind of crazy. If you don't know at home, Knockout City is a dodgeball multiplayer, sort of arena shooter, but it has dodgeball mechanics, so dodging and deflecting and power-ups for different dodgeballs. When the game came out, I was a big fan of it, and it's been out for a little bit over a year and a half, I think, and it's gone. What do you guys think about that? That's interesting.
I mean, we played it together.
Yeah.
We played with a group of friends.
It was such a fun, just goof off type game.
Fun is a really good word for that game. Fun.
Yeah.
I like that word.
I feel like it just kind of failed to capture me for long enough. So it kind of I played it for a week or two, and then I never touched it again.
It didn't really have a lot of depth or anything to really spend a lot of time on.
The story is coming in kind of hot from us. Recording this, I think this was news yesterday, maybe even the day before.
Yeah.
We're recording this on the 3rd of February, so some news might not have hit when this airs. But do we know in their announcement of this why they're shutting it down, or is this mainly no one really knows? They're just saying we're shutting down servers.
I'm not sure.
I'm assuming it was probably I have no idea, but I'm assuming it was probably because of lack of audience.
Yeah, I hear nothing about that game.
Yeah.
So you probably just
it was
fell
one of
off.
those it popped up, it was popular, and it disappeared again.
Kind of like Fall Guys.
Yeah.
Which
sort of idea.
This is kind of on the same vein as Knockout City closing, but also Turtle Rock, which is the developers for Back 4 Blood, announced that Back 4 Blood is going to cease development.
Yeah.
And I think Back 4 Blood came out maybe a year ago.
Not long ago.
A lot of games are
Not
dying
even?
right now.
To a very, very mixed review.
And I would love to have a whole conversation on this. I don't know if we have time for that today, because this is just kind of general video game news, but do you think this has anything to do with this idea of a live service video game and having to keep up with these live service trends of always having updates and having this experience that is going to be kind of consistent over the course of years, and then not being able to keep that up, so they shut down?
I mean, Like, I would say so. There's so many of the games today are based on changing. Like, if you think of the most popular games like Apex or not so much Apex, but like Fortnite, every few months it's basically a different game. They change so much about the mechanics. It's got like maybe the same, like it's a BR, but other than that, they change just about everything about it. And that's what keeps people engaged, is seeing the new content. And so when games aren't having that, unless they are specifically designed to not have constant content, they're gonna flop.
Right.
And like for me, Back 4 Blood, I played it. It didn't really capture me because I love Left 4 Dead. I've played both games. It just doesn't feel the same. It just feels worse, in my opinion. It just feels worse than Left 4 Dead.
In your
for me.
opinion, why does it feel lacking versus like a Left 4 Dead or a Left 4 Dead 2?
It just feels less refined, I guess. Like in the animations, and Valve has like the developer commentaries. You can tell they put a lot of effort into that game, and to like little things like. For the zombies, there's like 90 different animations that they can play based on like where they get hit and all that kind of stuff. And then for Left 4 Dead 2, there was a big controversy like, oh, it comes out a year later, and they still managed to innovate with everything because that game is
Well, that's the main thing. If games fail to innovate, they tend to fall short.
I mean, as most technology does. Gaming, video games, and the games industry is still a facet of technology. And I think a lot of us who love and play video games and are passionate about the way that they're developed, you have to understand that we're the same people who are going to go out and buy new technology and stay up with technology trends. So I think that's a good point. I think it's has to do with the idea of innovating and the idea of like always making something maybe not that's better or more innovative, but just something that's just looking forward. Even like new indie games that are coming out have different mechanics that you probably wouldn't have seen 10 years ago, and that's because of the innovation.
Well, that's like
of development.
Like why Portal was so insane is because it was this major like innovation to be able to operate a game like that.
Sure, and I think that's also parallel. Not to get too into it, that's also like parallel to the tech too. Like Portal was a video game that was like constantly working with the idea of using portals to like zip around an environment instantaneously without a lot of super heavy loading or a lot of like generation. It was just you were there and then you were there, and it was super super fast, which wasn't possible on like a PlayStation 2 or an Xbox. Yeah. With that being said, and all that innovation, talk. SpongeBob SquarePants, the Cosmic Shape came out on January 31st to a middling 70% on Metacritic, or 70 score on Metacritic. They're out of 100 if you don't know anything about Metacritic, but Metacritic is the website that is going to kind of average out all of the video games journalist scores. Sector actually scored it a little bit higher at an 80, stating, "Have you ever wondered what would have happened if you gave a multiverse unlocking tool to an infantile sponge? Well, even though SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shape doesn't really reinvent the basic formula of its predecessor, it at least aims to answer that very question." Which I think is interesting. I like SpongeBob games. I think they're just kind of like innocent fun. If you can make a SpongeBob game that feels like a SpongeBob episode, then I think you're fine. I mean, a 70 to me is like a fine score for a SpongeBob game. Do you have any commentary on this SpongeBob game?
I didn't even know that.
I actually do. So I think. So I played on my Wii. I think it was on the Wii. It might have been on the GameCube. Battle for the Bikini Bottom. Back when I was a little kid.
Battle for Bikini Bottom is an amazing game.
Personally, I am looking into purchasing this game just to see, because I looked at the Steam reviews, and it looks like a lot of the people that really love the game are people that played Battle for Bikini Bottom. And it seems like this is just more of that type of thing. You know what? If that makes people happy.
That, like, the demographic of a SpongeBob game is somehow like the people who are the high schoolers and like, young adults who are playing.
Battle for Bikini Bottom was a great game.
It was.
That's awesome.
The platforming on that game was actually pretty good. It was tight. Anyway, speaking of video games and older video games, Steam actually has an 85% off deal for the entire Outlast series. So it's around $60 worth of games for around $7. Matt, I know you're a massive horror video game fan. I know you're an even more massive Outlast fan. I think you proclaimed it as your favorite game almost of all time.
Yeah, it's Outlast and the DLC Whistleblower, my favorite horror game ever made. Nothing even comes close.
It's a great game.
It is so much fun.
Viewer discretion is advised. That game is not for anyone under mature audiences, but it is an amazing title. Speaking of amazing titles that have come out recently, a new video game by the name of Hi-Fi Rush shadow dropped earlier this week. And if you don't know what the term shadow drop means in any kind of entertainment industry, it means that a company makes something and then they just release it without any promotion, without any press, without any advertisements. They just announce it, and then the next day or the same day or a week later, the game is, or the thing is just out. And Hi-Fi Rush came out they dropped it at the last Xbox Developer Showcase, which was later last week. Hi-Fi Rush is gaining a bunch of amazing, critically acclaimed attraction. Game Informer actually scored it an 88 out of 100, noting that Hi-Fi Rush finds a magical sweet spot between rhythm games, stylish action, and lighthearted character-driven platformers we don't see very often anymore. And by every measure, it comes out on top. Have either of you have heard anything about this game?
No, that's...
All I heard is that it's really good. That's all I know.
It is an Xbox Game Pass launch title. So if
I know
you
what to do
have
when I get
Xbox Game Pass, go on and download that game. It is probably one of the more tight action combat experiences I've had in a while. If you are into rhythm games for viewers at home that might not know, or video games that use music and then the idea of catching the rhythm of that music to create function on the screen. So Dance Dance Revolution, Guitar Hero, DJ Hero, Rock Band, those are rhythm games. And this game takes the idea of rhythm games and adds it to an action combat system. So, Trev, you're going to love this. And this is kind of a cool spot to start talking
about that yet.
Music. But Hi-Fi Rush is actually a game that's based on the backtrack. So you're listening to the rhythm, and any attack that you make on beat is kind of like doubled and critical. And you build combos through the idea of building up the beat and staying on rhythm as you attack.
Well, I'm not sleeping tonight.
It's
that
a great
reminds
game.
me actually of a game I played a while back called it was like Crypto the Necrodancer.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that game. So is it like that?
It is Crypto the Necrodancer, but it is three-dimensional. It's cel-shaded. And it is not so much that Crypto the Necrodancer, you had to move your character to the beat of whatever the song was that was playing on the level. This is more so you're free to do what you want to, but beats of music can be used to add critical hits. So you're constantly trying to look out for those moments to hit the attack button on beat to get a critical or to land like the end of a combo.
Awesome.
So
That's really interesting.
when you're into it, and we'll talk about this, but music is a subconscious art form, especially when it comes to soundtracks and scores. So when you're listening to music as a tool for a video game that's usually in the background as a score, sometimes that's subconscious and you're not really thinking about the music forefront. And this game does that, but what they're doing is they're trying to blend that idea of music as a subconscious thing in the background, and they're trying to have that game flow of, playing this high-paced, frenetic action combat game to kind of blend together. So you're getting both of those things at once. So you kind of enter this flow state of hitting these buttons at the right times to create like a combo, which is pretty cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Some games have done it before. I forget some of these names. I'm not like an encyclopedia of video game releases, but some recent games have tried to use like first-person shooter combat against a beat. I think bullets per minute, BPM, was one.
I think I recognize the title of that.
Grew to some really awesome acclaim too. I don't know. I don't have any of that stat stuff on here, but I heard that game's pretty awesome too. So if you're looking for those kinds of games, Hi-Fi Rush seems like it's going to be a treat. So, upcoming game releases. We have a couple this week, going into the week of February 10th, which is going to be hopefully the Friday that this episode's week that will air, is Hogwarts Legacy. It's this very large RPG role-playing game by Portkey Games, and also Housemarque, which is the people who are also making this game. Hogwarts Legacy is aiming to be like kind of the AAA, big-budget Hogwarts fantasy role-playing game that everyone's kind of waited for forever.
I am beyond excited for that one.
Me too, buddy. Me too.
Pumped.
Yeah. Are we all getting it, you think?
Oh, God,
I think so.
So that means the next episode we're going to have like a review of this game then.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, for sure.
2/15, so February 15th, the week after, Returnal comes to PC. Are we familiar with Returnal?
You told me about it.
Returnal, I will sing Returnal's praises until I don't anymore. Returnal is a roguelike, third-person shooter, very arcadey, feels very, fast-paced, twitchy, and it's on the PS5 right now. It's been on the PS5 since launch, and it's now coming to Steam on February 15th. People have been waiting a long time for this one. Wild Hearts, the next kind of adventure in the popular Monster Hunt genre, not Monster Hunter, but the Monster Hunt genre, comes out on February 17th. That's a big AAA game. Anything on that? You guys got to stay on these things.
I've never heard this.
This game looks really cool. Are we familiar with Monster Hunter, the video game series?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, but it's not by Capcom. So everyone's kind of looking towards this as like maybe the next step in like the genre of monster hunting games, which seems pretty cool. And then last but not least, probably my, probably my most favorite thing on here, except for maybe Hogwarts Legacy, is Destiny Lightfall, the new expansion from Bungie, the creators of Destiny. Do you guys play Destiny?
I have.
No, but
man.
I have. It was a long time ago, but then I logged back into the game and it was completely different. So
Yeah.
I don't really
They
know.
just keep dropping more and more content.
Yeah.
Little fun piece of trivia. I actually have a signed poster from people at Bungie
Get out of
from
here.
Destiny.
I was actually cleaning out my closet, and I found the very first GameStop promo poster for Destiny 1 back in 2016. It was actually, I got it in 2015 when I pre-ordered Destiny 1 on the PlayStation 3. Because that's what it was, and I kept it in a frame this whole time, and I have it on eBay right now because I just don't want it anymore, and it's going for like $40. Like, that's kind of crazy. It's just a piece of paper, but anyway, yeah, that's awesome. Signed?
Yeah,
How do you get
a bunch
that
of
signed?
people. My mom has a friend at work
Your
whose
mom
son
has a friend at Nintendo.
works for Bungie.
Okay, got it.
It's my mom's friend.
Yeah, it's my mom.
Imagine
has
that.
a
My
friend
uncle works at
Nintendo.
Bungie.
My uncle works at Bungie. That's yeah. I'm excited for Lightfall. It's going to be an awesome addition to the Destiny franchise. With that being said, we're talking about music today, gentlemen. That's why we have Trev on. Trev is a aspiring musician. Trev, do you want to give the viewers a little bit of backstory on who you are?
I'm Trevor, going into music production. That's where I'm going to be going to school for. Always been passionate about music, and I love its interaction with other media, so I'm hoping I can shed a little bit of perspective on this.
Awesome. Matt, what do we have planned for today?
So, first, we are going to go through, all three of us, our top 5 video game soundtracks. And we're just going to, discuss what makes those soundtracks important to us.
Sure.
And just, talk about it.
Do we want to figure out who wants to go first?
You keep both looking at
I got it. I'll go first.
Let's go, Matt.
Okay, so, number 5, we have Outlast. This is just really biased because I love the game.
Favorite game.
It's not my favorite game ever made, but it is my favorite horror game.
Can I ask you what your favorite game of all time is?
I don't know.
Do you have that answer?
It's probably Cave Story, actually.
Cave Story. Okay, fair enough.
I don't know. Cave Story is like a game I always come back to, and I always enjoy it every single time I play. So, yeah, I would say Cave Story probably.
Why would you say Outlast has... How would you explain why Outlast has really good, solid music?
Everything in Outlast has like a soundtrack behind it, right? You're in you're just exploring the asylum. It takes place in, and there's always like a constant like sound in the background. And I like to bring up when I talk about the music, Outlast Whistleblower. There's an enemy, right? And you're hiding from him at the beginning, and you can hear these like very like loud like sounds of like metal hitting together. It's almost like, and there are these strings in the background that play like very softly. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it's your heartbeat, right? But when he spots you and starts chasing you, the strings overtake it and become like very fast. Like, oh, this dude's chasing you. Yeah, you should run. And then the heartbeat kind of takes a backside. Right. It's just the music is very complicated, and I love that because when you look farther into it, you find a lot. Like the composer, I think his name's like Samuel Laflamme. I think I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but he did amazing for that game. I don't know what he was doing. But
I like you use the word complicated, which is a really interesting word to use for like music production in general, because obviously production is complicated, but when you're talking about sound design and production and score and soundtrack for video games,
ideally it's like not that complicated because you don't want that taking away from the gameplay.
It's like audibly not complicated.
It's all about like under.
Yeah, it's all the
Which is what the show's
undertones.
about. It's that idea of like when you're looking at game design, I think the most impressive thing about soundtrack for video games that like still gets me to this day is how dynamic soundtracks are. Because you've put it on here a couple times, and I won't spoil your list, but there are, like, you say in this one, and I won't say the name because I want you to do that, but music has a different connotation depending on when in the game you are. In a movie or in a television show or on an album, a song is a song that is in this moment. Or in a movie, the song is going to play when, you know, the Avengers get together and, like, whatever, right? Like, we know that that's going to happen. We know, like, the Portal song is going to play for Endgame. We know that's going to happen. In video games, there's not that. Like, video games, you can be in a hallway, and then a sound kicks in because the game is telling the engine to do that, and now you have this thing that's going on. That still, to this day, blows my mind. I'm 29 years old. I've been playing video games since I was, like, 4, and I still don't understand how we got to this point, you know? Anyway, that's just picking your brain a little bit and kind of just bouncing off, but yeah, that's insane.
So number 4 and 3 are a little bit less complicated, but at number 4 we have Cuphead. I mean, Cuphead is just like such a unique and crazy game. I love Cuphead so much. Yeah. It's such a fun. It's just so fun, you know.
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's
like
hard.
It's annoyingly fun.
Yeah. But it's just such a. It's goofy. The music. Yeah. It's lighthearted, and I mean the King Dice theme.
Oh, for sure.
It goes.
It's just
it's so good.
It's like 1930s jazz music. Like it's just like
loud
so in the game itself. And I think I've already used this word a couple times. The game itself is kind of frenetic. It's just all over the place in a nice and organized way, I guess, which is kind of an oxymoron.
But it throws a lot at you at once.
It's just so much stuff going on in the music. Like if you had to choose one specific music genre to like make for that game, it has to be like that 1930s big band, like jazz, horn music. Like,
well, that's like when it comes down to that, then it's like I will sing the praises of Cuphead forever. It's on my list too. Is the animation is gorgeous, and it's like with that kind of animation, you can't not do that 1930s jazz band, like that big band. Always like that's one of those that the soundtrack is in your face.
Right. Yeah. I 100% agree with you.
And then number 3, we have Doom Eternal. I mean, Doom Eternal. I come back to that game very often just because, you know, I don't know how much I can talk about it.
If you want a game to just make you just like not angry, but a game to just pump you up.
Yes.
Makes you feel powerful.
It's like when you go to the gym and or you're running or you're whatever, or you're getting like ready to do something intense and you put music on and you put that song on that like
it's the Doom Eternal soundtrack.
That's what it is. That's Doom Eternal as a video game.
I was just like last week I was talking to you. I was just replaying Doom Eternal and I pull my headset on, you hit play and it's just
on. It's just on.
It's always.
If there's an on and off switch, there. I'm gonna look like Cuphead is a slider, right? Like Cuphead, there is a slider that kind of moves around. Yeah. Doom Eternal is like a switch where you hit start and it's on.
Yep.
That's it, and then you're on for the whole thing.
Well, that's like you just like you drop into the boss, or when you're in like. Even when you're literally just walking around,
there's
it's
always
got
like
something
in the background. There's something.
And then you just like walk into a room with like 1,000 demons, and it just I can just picture some dude in a studio, and they're like, "All right, we need some backing track," and him just going off.
Yeah.
Okay, so at number 2 we have Cave Story. You know, my favorite game. This was the music that has different connotation depending on when in the game. Yeah. So. The title screen of the game, it has this, I don't really know how to describe music, but it just has this, like, it's almost kind of hopeful, the tune that plays. But once you beat the game and you go back, there's something wrong with it. And you learn in the game that there is something wrong and
so
stuff like that. And there's this, like, town area that you keep coming back to throughout the game. And... you know, you get in there, and it's like a nice little, like, peaceful song. You know, it's a peaceful town filled with these, like, cute little rabbits, like rabbit creatures. But then as the game goes on, it slowly transforms from, like, oh, cute and, like, happy to very, very sad. Yeah. It's a sad song.
If you, so, like, you might, like, be like, what are you talking about? I have never played Cave Story.
Me either.
It's like, it's a
Can you explain
it's
in
an
like a
indie game.
sentence or two what Cave Story is?
This is like the worst possible game for me to do this. Um,
Well, what kind of game is it? Let's not even talk about the story. Just what kind of game is it?
it's a game about.
Is it like an RPG, FPS?
I can't really say, like, make up my own original one, but I watched a video on it that has, like, the best sentence to describe it. The perils of becoming human.
Oh, love
Dang.
that. Okay, cool. What's the gameplay? Is it an action-based video game? Is
It's
it an RPG turn-based
yeah, it's like
video game?
it's like a 2D platformer with, like, shooting kind of game.
Okay, cool.
There's platformer parts, but there's also enemies, and you have to, like, shoot them, and you have different weapons,
I'm gonna have
stuff
to
like
look
that.
at that. That's cool.
It's a fun game.
Number 1, Matthew.
Undertale.
Yeah, Undertale.
It's a
Iconic.
super easy choice. I mean,
Agreed.
personally, I don't really like it for the reasons why everyone else does, like Megalovania, classic song. Everyone loves that song, which is also crazy impressive because Toby Fox composed the original version of that song at 14, which is
I mean, I was making music at 14, but I was not making Megalovania at 14.
I don't know about
That's-
about
That's
that.
insane.
Toby Fox is kind of a genius, though. I think he's
Yeah.
just kind of a creative genius, which is
Like Undertale utilizes leitmotifs, so you'll hear the same kind of like rhythm in the background of songs throughout the entire game. And like with the first boss battle has like parts in the last one. That was a really bad way of explaining it. So the last boss battle in the game, the song has parts from the first one.
Right.
And that's distinct because the final boss, his wife is the first one, the
Sure.
first boss.
sure.
So
It's like
you
parts
can
of-
hear parts of her song, and it's like a struggle.
I love that. I love that. And not even in video games, the idea of leitmotifs and, even in just like albums, but
I just think of like as soon as you say that, like Hand of God on
on John Bellion's
on Human Condition.
Human
Like that
Condition.
song's my favorite song just because it's calling back to all the previous.
Sure. Yeah, it's that's such a cool. I love those callbacks. I think that's, and I mean, movies are one thing, and I'm a video teacher. I love movies. I love production, but there's something about sticking with characters for, 10, 20, 30, 40 hours. Undertale's a big game. You play that game to get what they would call like the true ending. You play that game multiple times from beginning to end, in different ways and different styles to get to the final kind of ending. So by the time that you get to this, even in your first playthrough, you're playing this game for 15 hours. It's not a movie. A movie, you're with the character maybe, even if it's Harry Potter and you're attached to these characters, you're with them for 8 movies. It's around 16 hours. But you're with these characters controlling them for 15, 20, 30 hours. And
Gonna get attached a little.
that means something. Like that, when those things hit, like the narrative kind of speaks for itself, and that's such a cool moment. Yeah. Undertale is an amazing number 1 for you. I really like this list.
Yeah, and then one honorable mention I have to say, The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask.
Ah.
Originally, I wanted to put Zelda, a Zelda game in number 5, but Outlast I've been playing it a lot recently,
bias
so
creeped in
it's
a
kind of
little bit.
biased.
Yeah, that's
but
fine,
I
that's
also
fine.
I don't think I would have been able to choose anyway. There are so many Zelda games that I've played almost all of them, and yeah.
I've only played a
I've
couple.
only
I'm not a Zelda
I don't think I've
person.
played the Oracle games.
Oracle, like Seasons and Ages and stuff.
Yeah, I've played
Those are on the Game Boy? Is that right?
Yeah.
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 I kind of stood away from all the handheld ones.
Played Minish Cap. I don't know.
Minish Cap's actually really
Yeah,
good,
but
though.
Majora's Mask
Anyway.
is just Majora's Mask in general is such a weird game
Yeah.
for all the Legend of Zelda games, and it's such like an emotional game.
It's like a fever dream of a video
Yeah.
game. It's a weird.
But-
That game scared me as a kid.
Yeah, the music
It's a
does
horror
such
game.
a good job at portraying fear, especially
Sure.
like the Final Hours song,
Ugh.
when you only have 12 hours before the moon comes down
Dawn
and destroys
of the Final
everything.
day. Ugh.
Yeah,
That game's a horror game.
it's so scary.
Chev, you wanna go?
Sure.
Let's do it.
So, I mean, I'll go top to bottom on here. We've already talked about Doom a lot, but just that
Sure.
the Doom soundtrack is one where I could be doing like not even playing the game, and I'll want that playing in the background, just because it's so good all the time.
Remember Matt in esports? We used to listen to Doom Eternal soundtracks before games. It's just like it's good pump
I
up
did.
music.
I
No,
gotta
I
play
did. When
for
I put my
track.
earbuds in, whenever I was
Eternal?
playing, it was always Doom.
Yeah,
always.
makes sense. Makes sense.
It gets you in that that headspace.
That mind
time.
space, yeah, for sure.
And then one that we haven't talked about a lot, but is so iconic is all of the Halo. But I have Halo 2 on here. Like you can literally have someone just start doing that like ooh.
Yeah.
And everyone's
doing it.
You don't even have to have played Halo
No, you
to
just
know
know.
the Halo
Yeah.
soundtrack. And I think that's what sells it, is so insane.
It's man, not to make this about me, but just like I can't believe that like you guys weren't alive when Halo came out, which like Halo 2 came out.
Yeah.
My head hurts. I'm getting old. And I was kind of young, so that's jeez, man. Anyway,
Just catching up.
It's catching up a little bit, yeah.
But just I like, because Halo is probably, it's one of the first games I played, because my first console I think I had, other than like my Wii, was the Xbox 360, and I got a couple of games when I got it, and one of them was Halo, and I putting that in, and I remember I had not ever played a first-person shooter, and getting so frustrated.
Yeah.
And then you just have the music in the background that was just encapsulated.
I think one of my first next-gen video game memories was loading up Halo 3. So it wasn't Halo 2, but Halo 3 on the 360, because that was one of the first games I got with my 360. But believe it or not, not to sidetrack too much, but when I was in high school, for the first like 2 years of my high school career, so this is 2007 and 2008, I actually didn't have like next-gen hardware. It'd be like me having I guess like a PS4 now, like whatever. I actually didn't. I had a PS2, PlayStation 2, for like the first like 4 years of like the Xbox 360's life cycle, because I just wasn't up to like I just didn't have one. And then I had friends at school and they were like, "You have to get an Xbox 360. Like they're crazy." And I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Halo and Modern Warfare 2, like old Modern Warfare 2.
Yep.
I'm like, "What?" So I got one, and I remember booting up Halo 3 on my like little flat screen in my room or whatever, and the music came on the choir like main theme, but it was the title screen was of the Ark, the thing in Halo, that big ring around the planet, and the music was swelling, and that was the moment where I was kind of like, in my head I was thinking like, this is bigger than like a video game. Like this is not just a video game. Like this is bigger. This is way more expansive than anything that I'm used to playing, like, you know, Guitar Hero and like Kingdom Hearts on my PS2, you know. Anyway, sorry, that's just crazy to think back.
It's weird that Halo's been out that long and it's like struggling right now.
Yeah, that's a whole other episode.
That's a full episode.
Full episode.
That could be a series in
The
itself.
qualms of live service video games. Anyway,
Then up next I have, and I know, like this is just one of my favorite games of all time. Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Just the ambient music and that, like there's so much of that game where you're just walking and roaming.
Like, man,
It's so good.
the Breath of the Wild is like
Overall, it's just insane.
It's such an like elegant game.
elegant.
Yes.
Is such a good.
It's
yeah,
such.
It's a beautiful game. It's just
You just sort of want to just
live in
observe.
it. Yeah, like, man, the colors. I remember like, and just, you know, looking behind the scenes, and I'm looking at the lists and stuff too. My number 3 is also Breath of the Wild. So me and Trev kind of like, I guess we're on the same page there a little bit. And the reason why I chose that is literally because of that one set of piano notes at the beginning when you crest over the plateau and you see the world, and you get those couple of just chimes of a piano, and they're light and they're just there.
That's like a movie scene there.
It's just you like chills. Just you get chills.
And even just like
the game doesn't need a soundtrack to
No.
like tell you how to feel.
And there isn't really one. Like there's not really.
It's just always there.
It's just situational music chimes. When you get into a battle, there's some like.
It can get intense.
It can, yeah, but I think it gets intense because there's not music constantly.
Yes.
It's quiet.
It's controlled.
It's controlled, and I love. Yeah,
like
what
the,
a
the Guardian
just-
theme, especially.
Or even just like the
Nightmares.
old school, like the Discovery sound that plays just at.
oh, they rely on like that nostalgia of like, you know, you finding a crack in the wall and you blow it up in an old Zelda game with the bomb, and you get that doo doo doo, like that's I'm there, I'm all in, like I know it's like a dopamine like hit, like that sound relates to me being happy. or me being pumped about something. That's weird.
You're just
but
like, "Ooh, I
yeah.
discovered."
Yeah. Put that sound anywhere. If I open a door and I hear that sound, someone plays it on their phone, I'm pumped. I'm like, what's in this room? Something's in here right now, you know? That's crazy. Anyway, yeah,
And
what's
then-
Breath of the Wild?
We talked. I think we talked Cuphead to death a little bit, but that's
Number 2, too. High regards, huh?
Well, because
Yeah.
like Cuphead, when I got my Xbox One, how long ago is that? That's weird to think about. That was probably one of the first games I had gotten because one of my friends had told me, like, you need to play this game. Like, you will love this game. And just every single time you start any level, it comes in with those, like, that big band or that, like, intense music. And every phase of, like, the bosses changes it a little, but still has that, like, same vibe. And I love it. I love the whole...
I want to hire that, like, announcer.
Yeah,
Yes.
like
Like,
the-
let's brawl, or like whatever he says. Like,
Knockout!
yeah, I want to hire him to do something. Like, I just want him to say my name, and put it in the classroom and be like, "This is me. This is who I
I
am."
just think of, like, the Bang, Here We Go.
Yeah, from AJR. Yeah, like the subway guy. Yeah, it's that guy's voice is cool. Like that, the Cuphead guy's voice is super cool.
we go.
But yeah, Cuphead.
And then, like, I think
This one, I was
This
not
is
expecting.
This is
Well,
a good choice, though.
It is.
I love
agree
this
with
choice.
you. I agree with you.
well, this is another one. Like, this is my top 5 games of all time, up till 3 a.m. with my headset on, screaming at my friends' games in Sea of Thieves. Like, I just think of the, like, most visceral memory I have of this game is it was like 2 a.m. Just about everyone was off. It was me and 2 of my friends, and we were playing, and the Megalodon theme, like, the music was playing, and we were all, like, my mom came up and told me to quiet down, because we were all screaming at each other, "Where is it? Where is it? Do you see it? Where is it? Get the cannons, do this." Just all of, like, because it's not, like, a lot of games where the music is a big deal, it's very, like, either single player or linear, where, like, you can tell in the coding, like, you passed a certain spot,
Yep.
the music starts. Whereas in Sea of Thieves, it's not linear. Like,
Situational.
It's situational.
Yeah.
So when a skeleton brig shows up, or a megalodon, or the kraken, and everyone's sitting there, like, you haven't even seen it yet,
Right.
and you're already like, "Oh my god, here we go."
You can't talk about Sea of Thieves though without talking about the instruments though, because I
Oh
think
my
that's
God,
like
yes.
when you put this on, but beyond any of the situational tracks that they have, that, like, you know,
The shanties.
skeleton is here, the instruments, like
They're
the
so
instruments and the
goofy.
shanties
They're
that you
so
can
much
make.
fun.
But, like, if you think about, like, and again, this is a game design podcast, so I like the idea of breaking down, like, why something is the way it is. But if you think about, like, and Trev, you can think, I mean, all 3 of us have done some kind of music production something before, right? So think about the time and the effort it takes to make something like that work. Because
Oh, yeah.
if you're not familiar at home watching, in Sea of Thieves, you are able to choose an instrument. There's a ton of them. There's
Oh,
like
yeah.
I think there's like
There's like a whole wheel.
there's like
The-
a lute. There's
The
a,
drum, the weird, the thing that
The
you
mandolin?
like, spin around. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what it's. I don't know what
the
that's called. but
the banjo.
yeah, it's
Is it
it's like
banjo?
there's like a
banjo,
string
accordion.
instrument. There's an
Yeah,
accordion.
the accordion. That's the
drums.
4.
Yeah,
There's I think there's 4, because you, like, will have a full
sure.
galleon.
And in the game, you can just take out the
And start playing.
instrument and just hit the trigger to, like, you know, like, interact with it, and it will just start playing a song, and it plays a random song from a couple of different songs. The cool part is, if you have someone playing with you, or multiple people, if me, Trev, and Matt are playing, and I start playing a thing, and I'm halfway through or a couple of seconds through, and Trev takes out his other instrument and starts playing, it will match up to what I'm playing. So, and then when you have 4 people together, you can actually make, like, a full
Yeah.
song with all of the instruments. To do that, like, think about recording a track and then recording
yeah.
multiple tracks, and then having the game have to figure out how to match those tracks up every time perfect.
Well, because, like you're saying,
Yeah.
but when, like, if one of us is playing, and you start, it doesn't always start right away. It gives it, like it's matching its beat up,
Yep.
and I love that, and just how many there are, like the pirate legend theme to, like, open the hidden areas and all that, like, all of them. They're little, like, you could go through the entire game and never play one of those sea shanties,
Sure.
but it's just, they're all so good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the cool part about something like Sea of Thieves, which I think is an amazing number 1 for you, is that a lot of these games have great music because they're memorable as music tracks or memorable as parts of the game. But in Sea of Thieves, the music is memorable because like I made memories with that music. Like the whole reason why Sea of Thieves is a good choice is because like I remember being with my friends and playing those dumb sea shanties together, and it's just fun. And it's like that's music, man. Like that doesn't have to exist, like you said, but it does, and it's amazing because of it. So yeah,
and like great. The best ones were always when like we would be playing and there'd be like an enemy team, and you're trying to decide, are they gonna hop aboard and play sea shanties with you, or do you got to start running?
And I mean, we haven't even talked about this yet, and I don't think anything on my list actually like would go over this either. But I also think in video games there's this, in especially multiplayer online video games, there's like this interesting kind of layer of audio that is like the proximity chat.
Oh god.
In Sea of Thieves, there's proximity chat, and if you don't know what that means, it means that when you have your microphone on and someone else has their microphone on, depending on how close in proximity you are to each other, your voice will show up in their headset or on their speakers. So you can kind of have this immersive experience where someone's like kind of sailing towards you and they're like, don't shoot me, and then like you can hear them far in the distance over like water, which is like, it's not music and it's not a soundtrack, but it's a layer there that's like, having someone just like yelling over their speaker like we're good, we're not gonna hurt you, and you're just playing sea shanties at them. It's just memories like that are so
just
crazy.
Like 30-second like note that has nothing to do with the music. The animation of the water in that game. I remember I was playing and I literally I was on, I can't remember if I was on with you or with Will.
Probably both.
Probably both. I literally was like, it was the first time I booted the game. I walked to the boat, I tipped my camera down, and I was literally just staring at the water, going, this looks like it looked and like the rest of the game's aesthetic is super like cartoonish, but you just look at the water.
And it's functional water too.
Oh yeah, like it's like the waves are going.
Yeah, it's
like,
not just like a texture map on top of it. It's an
like
actual
insane.
functional. Yeah,
I
like volumetrically, it has to actually work
you
like
can
water.
Like fall under the weight. It's just
Yeah, I agree with you. That's there's like two innovations in recent time that I can think of where I was like, whoa, and that's one of them. Another one is not on my list, but it's a memorable. It's an honorable mention, so I'll mention that later. But yeah, that's an innovation in itself. That water is crazy.
I love Sea of Thieves so much.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, my 5.
Let's hear 'em.
Number 5, Hades. You ever play Hades?
I have not.
Come on.
I've heard of it.
Okay,
I've
Hades.
seen it.
I feel like I'm
before.
personally offend you with how many games.
No,
I haven't
it's
played.
okay. No, most of these games you'll probably know. Nah, most of them.
I know the other ones.
Yeah. Hades is a roguelike, which maybe from, if anyone can tell at home, I like roguelikes. I think roguelikes are pretty cool. Roguelike is the genre of, doing something and then failing and then, going through kind of a loop and doing it again and again and again until you make progress and eventually beat the game. Binding of Isaac is one. Hades is one. Returnal is another one. Dead Cells is another one that's really good. But Hades is kind of on the same kind of like level or vein as Doom Eternal. Like that music is just, you get in and it's just like, it's addicting music. You just keep listening to it and you're like, I can listen to this all day. It's just like rock, heavy rush music that's just like, let's just get to the point, and I love that. So Hades is probably up there for me. Also, the art style of that game is beautiful, and we're going to talk about art in another episode probably, Matthew?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's one of them.
I'm sure this will come back at some point. Number 4, and a couple of these we've already talked about, so mine are going to be quick, but Undertale, number 4 for me. I don't think it's like number 1 perfect, amazing, but like Toby Fox is a absolute just masterclass of like one person making an entire thing and having so many different facets of that thing be made from him. Like he made everything in that game. Like my brain can't comprehend that.
Kudos to Undertale, because there are so many people, like I'll be scrolling on TikTok or something and someone will be playing Megalovania and I'm like, you probably couldn't tell me what that's from.
Sure.
But it's just so...
It's like so wide-reaching.
It is.
Sure.
It's like there are people who will never play Undertale, have never heard of Undertale, have never... Yeah. And they're just like...
Yeah. We talk about like pop culture, but that's kind of like any kind of... Like the Jurassic Park theme, or the Indiana Jones theme, or the Harry Potter theme, like any of the John Williams themes, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
If it's John Williams.
Yeah, I guess. But that's also music. Like
the Imperial March.
Yeah, that it's, you don't have to know it to know the music, which that's like an entirely different accolade for like
now I just
a
have
person.
the Jurassic Park theme in my head now.
There you go. See. Number 3, Trevor and I matched on this one was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I mentioned it. I will say it again. Those piano chimes at the beginning are like some of my favorite chill-inducing moments of a video game. Like that's just, I don't know. That's just, what a beautiful game.
Mm-hmm. Number
2. I don't know if either of you have played this. I'm going to bring out my Japanese role-playing game side for the last 2 of these. I'm sorry for that, for my people who do not like these. But number 2 is Persona 5. Anything?
Slightly.
I know one character from Smash Bros.
The Joker. Persona 5 is like, again, same vein as like a Cuphead type situation where it's just the music is so indicative of what the thing is. Where Persona 5 is a game about these people who steal other people's like hearts through like this idea of like you pretty much catch Pokemon. And they're called personas. And you take time in the dungeons of the game, because it's a role-playing game, are like the people's kind of psyches. Oh. And you go through the game and they're bad people. So your job is to change their heart. That's the whole idea of the game. So a person does a really bad thing and it's affecting your team in some way. So you hop in, you change their heart, and then you go out. And the soundtrack is like this smooth, jazzy, kind of just big band, quartet of like, varying degrees of intensity for what you're doing. So there are like relaxing themes and they're like really bombastic themes. And if you have never played Persona, just go online and like listen to the soundtrack, because it's standalone music that would just hit. It's just really good. So Persona 5 is like my number 2. Number 1, Final Fantasy 7. You guys are too young for Final Fantasy 7.
I know about Final Fantasy 7.
I know you know about Final Fantasy. Have you played Final Fantasy 7?
I haven't.
I think we're hurting his soul with how many of these we haven't played.
No, I think it's just like it's iconic. Like Final Fantasy 7, I guess, is like the most iconic. Yeah. Like maybe you don't know, but like if I were to like say like Sephiroth, which is the main villain of the video game Final Fantasy 7, his theme, which is called One Winged Angel, you would probably, if you haven't even played it, know, even if you don't know it by saying it, listening to it, you're going to be like, oh, I know that, just like Megalovania. So, but also, like, that game was, like, and I don't want to be too what I'm going to do now, which is, like, and I hate when people that are older than me do this sometimes, but back in my day, or back in the 90s, when this game came out, there wasn't, like, a video game like this, which is a weird thing to say, because there was, like, role-playing video games in Final Fantasy. It was the 7th one, so there were 6 before it.
The fact that there's 7 final, and there's more than that.
There's 15 of them now.
Yeah, 16 is coming out this year, yeah. Crazy, I know.
They're turning into Madden, I swear.
Yeah, but Final Fantasy VII was the first time that the video game was coming off of a Nintendo console. Because before this, it was on the Super Famicom, and it was on the NES, and then it wasn't on the N64, but the idea was they were going to put it on the N64. And the game was so big that in the N64 is a cartridge-based system, like the NES.
It couldn't fit.
They did make a mistake. I'm sorry, Nintendo, don't hurt me, but like they made a mistake. They made the new generation of their consoles, the N64, which is a 64-bit console, was going to be on cartridges. And what happened was Final Fantasy VII was meant to be an N64 exclusive, but it was such a big game that they had to fit it. I think the number, and I'm going to butcher this, I don't really know, but it was something like 11 cartridges to fit Final Fantasy VII on an N64. So you would need to buy like a crate of like 11 cartridges.
I'm thinking of like the movie sleeves where you can get like all the Harry Potter movies.
You would have to get like you'd have to get like a Titanic VHS style binder of cartridges. So anyway, it ended up not being on the N64, and it was on the PlayStation 1 because it was a disc, and discs can hold way more memory. So it ended up being on 3 discs.
That's probably why we had the death of cartridge games.
Probably, I would think so. You cannot store that much on cartridge games.
Nintendo always has been very against like the whole pirating thing. Yeah. So cartridges, they're slightly better at not getting pirated. So, yep.
That's how it works, I guess. I mean, they did the GameCube for a while, but those were little mini
discs.
Which
they were like
so
they were
stubborn.
They were Nintendo was stubborn. They didn't want to give up.
Little. They're so funny to look at.
They went back to cards now. They have the
go
SD
back to
card
cartridges.
games.
Yep, they do. But Final Fantasy VII is just one of those games that, like, at the time it came out, and it was like no one ever saw anything like it. Like cutscenes that were pre-rendered, and the way that you kind of moved in these pre-rendered environments, it was like nothing ever. And the music was really what tied everything together. Like, I'm gonna spoil it, I guess, a little bit because it's like a 20-something-year-old game at this point. But in like the halfway point of the game, your love interest just dies. She gets killed by the main antagonist of the video game, Sephiroth, and that was something that like was a Luke, I am your father, or Snape kills Dumbledore moment where it was like
Spoilers.
well, sorry, these are all like old franchises, I suppose, but it was like a backup moment, like this is a cultural thing that happened, like it really was, and maybe I sound a little bit like exaggerated, but it really was. So Final Fantasy VII is probably always going to be my number one. There are songs that I can listen to for that and will make me not cry, but like tear up. Like there's moments in that game where it's like that's going to stick with me forever, and I think that's what makes music so special.
Yeah, I would say personally for me that the whole like emotional kind of thing is very much the same for me, but Undertale, because like Undertale was a very like I don't know if it was a very good like time for me to play. I was sick and I was just kind of laying in my bed. And I saw it was like, oh, it's like $15, and I bought it. And I didn't think anything of it, and I went through the entire story. That game is crazy. I love Undertale. Such a good game.
I just want to do and this has like zero emotional power, but I think it's just so funny, and it popped into my head while we were sitting here. There's an entire genre of music, Minecraft music. Like you can play Minecraft has such iconic music, and it just sounds like 8-bit music.
Yeah.
But you can I remember I was working on a song. And I showed it to Matt, and Matt, without skipping, turns to me and he just goes, "That sounds like Minecraft music," which
it's its own genre.
A little bit of a
it's
gut
its own
punch.
thing, yeah.
But it's like it's an entire
genre.
genre.
Gut punch? That should be a good thing.
Because it wasn't trying to be Minecraft, but
Minecraft
the fact
great.
that Minecraft music is so iconic that it's basically its own genre, I feel like that's something that deserves being mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I don't know why I didn't think of that. I would have put that in there.
Minecraft.
I would have put that on my list.
It's not my top 5, but
No,
that's like
it's
a hard 6 place.
Sure.
It's
Yeah,
just
I probably would have put that over.
Speaking
our
of, my honorable mention is the video game No Man's Sky.
Oh my god, yes.
No Man's Sky, so it's developed by Hello Games. They're a studio out of England. And before this, they only made, and I say only, I don't mean that as, a mean thing. They made, mobile games. So they made, a video game called Joe Danger, which was, a motorcycle, kind of like a motorcycle hill flip game where you just kind of go
hill
through,
climber type thing?
kind of, you go through courses and you get stars and stuff. And then in, 2014, they went to E3 and they announced, this huge game called No Man's Sky, and they proclaimed that you would be able to see, every universe, and it's, this huge game. And it came out to kind of a negative reception because a lot of the promises weren't there. And then over the years, they've kind of won back the popular opinion vote from just making updates that are really meaningful and free. One of the things that the game actually shipped with, which blew my mind as a young musician, because this was 2014, so I was, I was 21. I was just making music and I was enjoying it. But they actually got, and I forget the name of the people who did it, but they got an instrumentalist group out of London who Sean Murray, the game director, was a huge fan of, and they do a lot of amazing nebulous instrumental music, kind of Galaxy level of just big open
ambient
chords and ambient, and and with Sean Murray and that group, I wish I knew their name, I would have to find that name out. They made a software that kind of worked with the engine that they were using to develop the game, and it was a procedural music generative software. So it wasn't a procedural thing where we were talking before about a game kind of what game? Legend of Zelda, where you go up to skeletons and music plays because you're at skeletons right now. Mm-hmm. And that can happen wherever you are. This was different sounds would be picked generatively and they would come together to make music. So it wasn't there was 15 songs and they all play at different times, but they can happen in different spots. It was millions of connective things that would make infinite numbers of songs.
I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't know about
Weird.
that either.
I feel like I want to go play No Man's Sky again.
And I don't know So No Man's Sky has also released a bunch of updates that have kind of added some story and some structure to the game, because before it was not really structured.
It was just open world, right?
It was, and it was kind of just do whatever you want, but it was not in a good way.
Point.
It was really just there was no point to it. It was just play
OG
around.
Minecraft.
Kind of, yeah, but maybe even less, to be honest with you. But they added a bunch of structure, and with that, they added a bunch of like named tracks to their like discography of the game. So I don't know how much of the music in the game is still generative, but if you go back and watch 1.0 version of No Man's Sky, so the original version of the video game without any updates, that generative audio is there, and it's really, really cool to listen to. Like, innovation like that I think is amazing. Like, if you can make a game that's generating its own music kind of off to the side with things that you've kind of pre-created, like,
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier. Games have to innovate, or else they're going to flop and fail.
yeah. Anyway, that's our 5. Gentlemen, this was awesome. I had a great time. What's next for us? What are we doing next week? Or what are we doing the next episode?
I'm not like completely sure, but I'm hoping maybe a deep dive into gameplay and everything that makes the it's probably the most important part of the game. Game without gameplay.
No, really?
It doesn't really exist.
How revolutionary
It's in the
an
name.
idea.
So yeah, we'll take a deeper dive into that, and we'll solve all of the game industry's problems.
Yeah, as we usually do,
Yep.
as 3 people from a high school in Massachusetts.
That's all
Folks,
you need.
thank you so much for watching the first ever episode of A Closer Look, the Game Design Podcast. I am Joseph Barros.
I'm Matthew O'Neill.
And I'm Trevor Masnyk.
We'll see you on the next one. Later.